So continuing on with this kind of like buying and renting, we're going to move on to something that you'll be sort of having to make a decision on later in your life of cars, whether to rent a car or perhaps buy a car. We're going to look at buying a car first, but just a little bit of words before we kind of start on this one. When we buy a car, it's a little different than buying a home. Yes, we are buying something that does have value towards it. It's not like clothing or accessories or technology where it really isn't worth that much. A car is worth something. It's worth tens of thousands of dollars, and usually, people don't go up to a brand new car dealership and buy something in cash. They have to finance it. And this is again kind of buying on credit, but more so sort of kind of having an investment. But this is the thing. With cars, the investment is only going to depreciate in value, meaning it's going to lose value over time. Classic cars would be maybe the only example, or really exotic cars or something like that would be maybe the only real exception where after purchasing the value of it would go up. But that's kind of taking into consideration a couple things. One, it's either really, really old and it's classic, or two, it's very, very exotic and only a very few are made. But more importantly, you don't drive it. Once you drive a car, it's losing value as you drive it. If you buy a brand new car off the dealership, essentially when you take it off the lot, it basically loses $5,000 right as you roll it off the lot. It's kind of like a saying there. So cars are something a little different than houses, where you only really lose value in a car. And that might change your mind rather than to buy or to lease or rent a car, because it is a depreciating value. We'll talk about that in a little bit. For now, let's take a look at this question and let's see what we can do. So Carson is considering trading in his old car for a new one. He sees one that he likes, and it's listed for $19,995. He's got $1,700 saved as a down payment, and the dealer is going to offer him $1,200 for the trade-in of the old car. He's going to finance the remainder over 4 years with biweekly payments 4.3% compounded monthly. Okay. Couple things involved here. We got some new stuff that we haven't really seen before too much, and that's going to be looking at a trade-in. All right, there is something a little bit different that we have to kind of look at for trade-in values. So we'll talk about that in a second. Also, we're going to have to pay tax on this. In the questions that I give you, I'll make sure that it's like that you have to put in tax, or not have to put in tax, conversely. But for this question, we are actually going to need to put in tax. And we're going to say the tax is 13% here since he's buying a new car. Let's go ahead and let's put in our TVM solver to do biweekly payments. So just as we kind of see, we always show our work by saying N, I, PV, PMT. This should be pretty standard procedure by now. FV, P over Y, and C over Y. And we can kind of go through the list here. We know our interest is going to be 4.3. It's compounded monthly, so that's going to be a 12 down here. We want to make bi-weekly payments, which means once every 2 weeks. We know there's 52 weeks in a year, and if we cut that or divide that by 2, we're going to get 26 payments in all. We're going to do this for 4 years, so N is going to be 4 times 26. And our future value, want to pay off this entire thing, so it's going to be 0. And of course, we're going to be solving for this. Okay, let's talk about PV now. PV is not just the price of the car minus 1,700 minus 1,200. It's kind of a common mistake. There's a couple things that this trade-in value is going to do. Now, first up, this trade-in value is going to knock off the base price of the car. So what we have to do for our car is take what it's the ticket price of it, and we're actually going to subtract what the trade-in value is, and that's going to come before tax. Used car already has tax applied to it, so we don't have to really worry too much about anything like that. But in terms of when we're looking at our price, we have this being our base price of the car now. So when it was 19.99, oh, that should be a 5, I think, at the end. I'll just fix that up right down here. But I can talk when I do that. So what the trade-in value is, it's just going to lower the base cost of the car. Now what we have to do, since he's going to be financing, and we haven't done a down payment yet, we're going to have to times this by 1.13. And that's going to be for taxation. So in our TVM solver, we're going to go ahead and put this in. And if you ever have a question about tax, just let me know. It should be pretty evident in a question if tax is involved or not. In this question, it's not saying that there's tax, but I just know that since it's a new car, we're going to need to apply tax onto it. So he's going to be financing $21,000, 238.35. And then now this is where you can put a down payment off of. So now you can minus 1,700 from that. I'll try to just separate these two things a little bit. So that's what our TVM solver is going to look like. We got to take the trade-in value off the car before we take the tax. And then when we are putting in the TVM solver, then we apply the down payment. So it's almost like it's a down payment, but it kind of like has to be applied before the tax. So let's enter all this into our TVM solver. 38.35. We're going to minus his down payment from it, 1,700. We're going to come back to PMT. FV is that. PY is 26, but C over Y is 12. And let's go back and let's solve for his biweekly. There we go. So we're going to get that his biweekly payment is going to be $204.63. Perfect. So that's his biweekly amount. Okay, let's go ahead and let's figure out what his, I guess, total cost would be for the car. So let's actually just figure out what his total amount of financing is going to be. That's going to be the easiest thing to do right now. So let's see how much he's going to pay just for this, this kind of credit line, we'll call it. So he does this for 4 years. He's doing 26 payments of this biweekly amount. So we can go ahead and calculate that. 4 times 26 times 204. Oops, 204.63. So his financing is going to be, in total, $21,281. All right, so that's okay for the finance, but that's not actually the total amount that he's paid for the car. What that is the total amount that he's financed. Remember that he still actually paid the $1,700 as a down payment. So we're going to have to add back in that $1,700 for the down payment. So we can just add that onto this. 1,892.2. So with the down payment and the financing, we're going to have $22,981.52. Now, the last thing that we have to add on to this is his trade-in value of the car. Now, technically, he didn't pay with that, like, per se with money, right? But in reality, if they gave him that credit of $1,200 on it, that still is technically part of what he owes for that car. You can kind of think of it differently than if he didn't have that and he, let's just say he sold it off and they gave him that in cash. Well, he would just put that to his down payment, right? So we're going to add on that as well. So let's add on the 1,200. And we should get a grand total, just adding some stuff up, carrying the 1. So his grand total of what he paid for this car is $24,181.52. And again, this is coming from a car that he had to finance for, and let's actually just go back to my TVM solver to see. So we had to finance about $19,500. And after everything's said and done, with his down payments, after the financing, after all the interest, everything like that, he is going to be paying $24,000, a little over that, for the car. Cool. All right, let's finish off this question by looking at the interest paid for the car. So the interest paid for the car. Now, this is kind of a convoluted way to do it. I mean, we could go ahead and take a look at what the car cost beforehand, and then what he's paying afterwards. But we kind of have to work into the fact that the interest isn't calculated on stuff like the trade-in allowance and the down payment. What I would do instead, and this is going to be the easier way to do it, is just use the sigma int first payment to the 104th payment, the last payment. And remember, this 104 is the 4 times 26, the 4 years of biweekly payments. Since this is already in your TVM solver, we can just let the calculator kind of do it for us. A lot easier. I think it's a lot easier to think about. I'm not even quite sure of how we would set up the math to do this the other way, just because of the weird, okay, we got a trade in, but we also have a down payment and we have interest on that amount. I think it'd just be easier to kind of just do this way, where we have the first payment, the 104th, which is the last payment, and just kind of let the calculator figure out what our interest is. And we would get, in this case, it would be 1742.83. So if I had to just kind of think about this number, what I believe it's going on here is that it would be the $1,700 and plus the difference between how much you would pay from, how much you would have to pay from the original amount to how much your monthly payments would, or your biweekly payments are. I think that would be what the interest is. You know what? I don't even want to kind of theorize about it. I just kind of let the calculator do the thinking on this one. I think that takes the guesswork out of it. So we can get the interest paid. Let's just talk about this really quickly. And let's go over some facts. Carson had to buy this, right? It's his. He owns it, and he had to pay the $204 for the $204 for a full 4 years before he fully owned the vehicle. He made biweekly payments, so once every 2 weeks. He had to trade in his old car for it, and he had a down payment. At the end of it all, he paid $24,000, a little bit more, for this car with an interest of $1,700. So just making sure that we kind of review the facts before going on to part 2, which is going to talk about how he's going to kind of like rent a similar car instead. So that'll be the end of part 1, and we'll do part 2 next.